For 150 to 200 unit property, what staffing level usually makes sense?
So I'm one of those people that says one for every 100 units. So if you're talking 150, you're talking one and a half people on the front side, the office, and if you're talking 150 units, you're talking one and a half maintenance people. So 200 would be two full timers.
So one, it depends on the age of the property.
Absolutely, yeah, that's good.
If you're sitting in a good B class without too much deferred maintenance, for 150, 200 unit property, actually, I like to think you're going to need one office staff for maybe 60 to 120, maybe 150. Um, and then at least one maintenance man, maybe one and a half maintenance men, one maintenance man for every 100, one office for every 60 to 150. So if you get from 150 to 300, you're going to be looking at least two office, maybe one and a half office. You're looking at office staff and maintenance. So for 150 to 200, you're looking at four people. Welcome to the Ironclad Underwriting Podcast, where precision meets performance in commercial real estate. I'm your host, Jason Williams, and every week we deep dive into the strategies and systems and stories behind rock-solid underwriting. Whether you're a seasoned analyst, an up-and-coming investor, or a commercial real estate professional looking to sharpen your edge, this show is your front row seat to expert insights, emerging trends, and real-world underwriting tactics that stand the test of time and scrutiny. From market assumptions to debt structuring, cap rates to cash flow, we're cutting through the noise and getting to the numbers that matter. So sharpen your pencils and fire up those models. Let's get to work. This is Ironclad Underwriting. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Ironclad Underwriting Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Williams, and got my good friend, co-host, business partner, Frank Patalano. How are you doing, Frank?
Not too bad, sir. Not too bad.
So, if you've been listening to for us for right over a year now, and in honor of that, we were doing a Q&A session in the last episode, and we're carrying that into this episode as well. So we appreciate all user feedback. Apparently this podcast is going better than I originally hoped, but hey, that's a good thing. So it's hard to believe we've been doing this every week for a year now. So
Yeah.
now let's dive into some more of those questions that listeners have been asking. You want to start
All
us
right.
off?
Yeah, I can ask the first question. All right, so this has to do with deal packages.
Okay.
When you first open up a deal package or an OM, what's the first thing you look at?
Honestly, the first thing I look at is I pull up the D12. I like looking at the numbers. Um, and I can import the T12 into my software. It used to be an Excel sheet, but now it's my Ironclad software. And what it tells me is I start looking at like individual trends over the months. I have like little spark lines for it so I can look at things like right at a glance. So that's what I look at first. What about you?
I get a lot of deal packages or a lot of OMs. So usually I'm just looking at some of the basics. I'm looking at how many units are we talking about? What market are we talking about? I'm trying to figure out what makes this deal special because most deal packages that I see, I'm going to pass on. So I'm trying to look for reasons why I'd be interested in this one.
So is that's through the OM then, or
I mean, if the OM is the first thing I'm looking at, I'm just taking I'm just taking a summary. What's special about this deal? How many units is it? What market's it in? And that's without even necessarily looking at the price yet.
yeah. So with a T12, you're less likely to figure out what's special about it unless you can see like the trends proving that the previous owner rehabbed a bunch and then released up and they're selling because that's their business plan, which I've seen quite a bit of. You can actually see the trends. Their T12 numbers are dismal. Their T9 numbers are a little bit better, but you're like T6 and T3 numbers are like going through the roof. So that to me tells me one, something's going on, or two, they did like huge rehab and carrying out their business plan well. So that would be something special, is something going on in that market or for that property that would cause that. So Next question. Is it the difference between underwriting before an LOI or after due diligence or during due diligence? So we sort of briefly talked about this one last time as well. Probably should have lumped these questions together. But this one is one, I always put in bogeys for my CapEx. Um, I always put in, well, ideally you want like third party verification on like rents and stuff like that on what you can expect to get. You always want like an indication for insurance. All this could be done before due diligence. So your rents and your insurance, your property taxes can be looked up. You can do all of that before due diligence. You get a lot from, again, the T12. So you can do a lot before you submit an LOI. The only the one of the biggest differences is your capex budget is going to be different before the LOI and after due diligence. And so I always put in bogeys. You can, again, we talked about, is $10,000 good for a turn? It depends on the market you're in. But you can put in, all right, let's think we're gonna rehab all the units. We'll put in $10,000 per unit and just start off with that number, and then you can go and itemize it after due diligence. So, what do you think?
I mean, I agree with you 100%. The only other thing I would add would be, especially most of the time, don't forget, I'm not usually in the market. So I know a lot of the deals you look at, you're in the market. Since I'm not in the market, I'm gonna fly to the market and I'm gonna spend a little more time trying to figure out how accurate the rent comps and where we can get the rents are, and visit other local properties and feel the neighborhood.
No, and you can do some rent comp studies just like through apartments.com and Google and stuff like that. So you can do all that before your due diligence. Well, and when I say due diligence, I mean your due diligence time when you're under contract. That's what I'm assuming this question means. Because honestly, flying to the property, getting rent comps, going to other properties and seeing the amenities, that is also doing your due diligence. So that's what I was thinking. Due diligence is the due diligence time when you're under contracts.
Next question, how much weight do you give to loss to lease?
So um again, the T12 gives answers. If the current market rents that the current owner has not increased rents in 2 3 years, your loss to lease is going to be pretty small. If they've been steadily increasing their rents, you can give a percentage or two. If you plan on increasing rents right off the bat, you will have higher loss to lease because you expect, or at least for year one, because you have to wait for leases to expire before you can increase rents. And actually, I've been toying with the idea in my Ironclad software to calculate your loss to lease if your rent roll has like your lease expirations on it. So it'll calculate it all automatically. But generally speaking, it's going to be a pretty small number in the grand scheme of things. So like 1 to 2% is fine. And then you're going to have that if you plan on increasing your rents every year. So,
For me, I would say if it's less than $100, I don't give almost any weight to loss to lease. Beyond that, I think it's more important, but especially if you have decent tenants or long-term tenants, I think it's not as important sometimes. And yeah, just loss to lease is tough, especially when I'm comparing. When I'm talking about this, I'm mostly talking about what the seller's charging for actual rents now. We've often looked at things, it's like, wow, it's a little hard to get that extra 25 or $50.
so I mean, loss to lease is there, but it's not going to be one of your biggest losses. So vacancy is going to be your biggest loss.
Yes.
You need to account for vacancy more than loss to lease. So, okay, here we go. Is bridge debt a tool or a trap? Well, it is designed to be a tool. It is not designed to be long term. It is designed to bridge you from acquisition to where you can put it into long term debt, agency or bank or whatever. It's designed to be a short term tool. if you use it as a long-term plan, that's when it can become a trap. One, bridge debt is higher interest rates. It's interest only typically. It will cover some of your capex, and so since it's interest only, you're not paying down the balance at all. And so whenever it comes time to refi, you owe the full amount of the loan plus whatever capex draws you have on it. And if your plan is to just keep extending it, extending it, extending it, then that can become detrimental to you. So, what is your take on that?
Bridge debt is intended to be a tool. With the interest rate jumps about 3 or 4 years ago, it became a trap. Yeah, for the average deal, if the numbers work and if you follow your business plan and you fully raise what you're supposed to raise to start, and you have a decent property management company that you don't need to fire after the first year or 2 years, there's a reason for bridge debt, and there's a
Yeah.
reason why people use it. Uh, if you have issues, if you make mistakes, if you find surprises, it can trap you.
Yep. And if you can't refi, since interest rates were climbing last few years, refis they weren't getting the proceeds they need to get out of loans. With bridge debt, if your loan is coming due and you can't refi out of it with the proceeds you need, you might be coming and putting money into a deal just to get out of it, and that could be a not good situation. So
Yeah, it's not a phrase you use too often, but cash in refis or something.
yeah, cash in refi, or even if you have to sell, you have a cash in sales. Like, all right, I'm going to sell this property. It's going to cost me another 500,000 to sell it. That kind of sucks, but it does happen. So
Yeah. Next question. When is payroll too low to be believable?
when is payroll too low to be believable? One, I would look at the size of the property. And if they have full time staff, I estimate about 50K per staff person on average. Hopefully, you are paying less than, but for at least ballparking it, 50K per person is where I start. And if a property has four staff members, that's 200K a year, roughly. If they have four staff members, it's a 200 unit property and they have 120K for payroll. That's a big red flag for me. What do you think?
Um,
And also, it depends on your market completely
Absolutely.
because
It's funny you say that because I was thinking about the deal that we had in Idaho, and this is getting dated because this is 5 or 6 years ago now. But we had a small property manager trying to take the property in order to manage it for us. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll mow lawns at $6 an hour and stuff like that." And I just thought that was a little crazy, to be believable.
yeah,
Besides that, yeah, I agree with you. There's so many deals that we've seen where it's like, how is the payroll so low? And then we've acquired it. And it's like the payroll is twice that. Once
yeah.
you figure in taxes and some type of insurance or processing and everything else.
Some things I have seen is a lot of times you might have a maintenance man and a make ready team or whatever, but if the previous owner was like bringing it in third party to do make readies or to do capex or handyman work or whatever, that won't necessarily show up as payroll. It will show up as like turnover costs and other things. So if your payroll is too low, look at your turnover costs and see if those are like extraordinary.
Yeah,
Like,
your repair and maintenance might have a lot of
yeah,
man
those
hours in it as well.
those might be like super high versus your payroll, which that would just indicate that that previous owner was outsourcing everything. So, but that's almost like a part of the of two-part question for that staffing for 150 to 200 unit. You want to jump into that question right now while it's on our mind for
Ask the
100
question again.
for 150 to 200 unit property? What staffing level usually makes sense?
So I'm one of those people that says one for every 100 units. So if you're talking 150, you're talking 1.5 people on the front side, the office, and if you're talking 150 units, you're talking 1.5 maintenance people. So 200 would be two full timers.
So one, it depends on the age of the property.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good.
If you're sitting in a good B class without too much deferred maintenance, for 150, 200 unit property, actually, I like to think you're going to need one office staff for maybe 60 to 120, maybe 150. Um, and then at least one maintenance man, maybe one and a half maintenance man, one maintenance man for every 100, one office for every 60 to 150. So if you get from 150 to 300, you're going to be looking at least two office, maybe one and a half office. You're looking at office staff and maintenance. So for 150 to 200, you're looking at four people roughly.
Yep.
So, and then that goes into four people, 50K per. They should be right around a 200K um, payroll. And also going back to the payroll, you're going to have the same payroll again for that 60 unit as you will for that, say, 120 unit. And so the per unit cost of that person is doubled on that 60 unit just because
Yeah,
it has
and
half
we
the
keep hearing
units.
that from the banks too.
Yeah. So
Why is your payroll per unit so high? What is the best sign of a good operator?
communication, I think 100% communication, whether good stuff's going on or bad stuff's going on or everything's just running as it should be. Communication. Now, I say that, and I also understand that I probably don't communicate as much or as well as I need to. I think Brandon Turner did a big old post recently on one of his things where he thought he was communicating well, but his investors were saying he wasn't communicating well. So you have to realize communication is a two-way street. I can talk all I want, but if there's no one there to listen, there's zero communication. If you're sending out a message and that message is not received the way you want it to be, that's poor communication. So good communication, make sure your investors know what's going on, answer any of their questions they have promptly. Um, really, what do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to beat good communication. I would say that if you're working with a smaller operator that only has a few deals, they're doing a lot of the asset management and a lot of the work and a lot of the meetings, and they don't have a staff to create things or anything else. I mean, I have I'm in a deal where I'm a co-GP, and the main sponsor of the deal is in like 15 deals, and they can afford to have the staff to be releasing these beautiful communications every month, and it's like it's a little bit of a different world. Yeah, it looks perfect, but they're also, you're paying for that, and it's part of it's part of the process versus someone that might be running three deals. They can't afford to have the staff to do that, and
Yeah.
they're creating everything themselves.
Yeah. And it's really easy for the operators to get overwhelmed with everything, especially if something bad's going on the property, or you have a refi, or you switch management companies. You're spending all your time and energy making that property work. And the last thing on their mind is communication. And so that it happens. I'm not saying it as an excuse. I'm just saying that is one of the reasons why communication can be lacking. But if you're an investor listening to this, reach out to your operators, your sponsors of the deal, and just ask questions. If they don't answer, that's a problem. Um, if they do answer and they take your call and they give you straight story, I consider that good communication, even though it's just to a single investor. So it's sometimes it's easier for that operator to get those calls and deal with it that way than start creating all the nice newsletters and
I
stuff
take
like
phone
that.
calls every week from
Yeah,
investors. It's usually the easiest way. It's even better than the newsletters or anything else. Then they have direct questions, and I can answer them.
yeah. And we've also sent out emails before our for our newsletter updates, and we get phone calls because we didn't explain something clearly enough or something like that, and then the phone call clears it up. So this one goes back to OM information. What is the most misleading OM section? So not every OM has this, but I see it several times. And a lot of times they'll say the broker will put in possible CapEx projects to do. Sometimes they'll say these are the recent CapEx projects that have been done, but they don't specify if it's already been done or if there's possible things to do to the property to improve it. And so if you're someone who's just starting out and trying to underwrite it and you're looking at the CapEx and you're going, all right, roof 179,000 per building, or you're looking at um, 4,500 per unit upgrades, dog park upgrade, pool resurfacing, and you put all that into your underwriting. And then whenever you go and tour the property or you start doing your due diligence, you realize all of that has already been done. And so now your whole CapEx budget is has been a waste of time and you have to redo it, everything. So that's one of the things I see the most.
For me, it's usually the market pages about the market itself. So some markets are huge. Some cities are large and, twin cities and stuff like that. So they're promoting jobs that are 30 minutes or 45 minutes away when at the same point, most of the tenants on your property, there might be zero people that are working at that site. We had a deal where they promoted it being close to the college. We didn't have any people that went to the college that were tenants. I'm not saying you can't change a demographic of tenant. I'm saying that sometimes the OM can be misleading about different aspects of the market.
Yeah, and I've seen we have an Air Force base in the town that we invest in, and they always put that in the OM. And I don't think we've ever had a single person who worked at the base or was stationed at the base live with us at any of our units or properties. So that's another thing. But I was also thinking another misleading section are the comp section. Um,
Haha, yes.
they always pull comps from say the some better quality units, newer units or newer properties. Sometimes they pull comps from like an all bills paid property and this property is not all bills paid, and so you're looking at these comps and you're realizing, hey, I'm 150 below market, but then again you're also an older property and it's not all bills paid, so actually you are pretty much right at market level, and so you might not get that 150 rise right off the bat. So
How close do rent comps need to be? When I'm thinking about that question, I'm thinking about distance. So, like I said, if you're in a good sized city that's, even if it's only 15 minutes across, if you're talking about opposite sides of the city, those aren't good rent comps in my eyes. I would be as close as possible to the property. And I know that some cities don't have zoning the same way. Obviously, if there's a property right next to you or within walking distance, those are the kind of properties that I want to see most on the rent comps. If you have to drive 2 miles, 2 miles is a completely different neighborhood. Sometimes you have to, because of what your competition is, but I think you understand what I'm saying, that the closer the better, especially if it's the
so
same type of property.
yeah, so when I hear how close do rent comps need to be, I'm thinking vintage of the property. I'm thinking, is it all bills paid? Like I just spoke on a second ago. What amenities it has, what classes is it? Class A versus Class B? Um, because one of our properties is like a quarter of a mile from another property, and you want to use rent comps from those. Our property is a 1960s build, C class. We're bringing up to hopefully a B, but C plus. The other property is a B plus property, um, from like the 90s or early 2000s build. So even though it's a quarter mile away, I wouldn't consider that a comp because it's like totally different. So
Yeah, at the same point, it's a nice property, and there was if it's the one I'm thinking you're talking about, when they wanted to sell it a couple of years ago, they were trying to boost occupancy, so they were offering these rent specials that we could not compete with, and that was painful.
yeah.
All right, let's see. Let's ask you a question here. What is your most expensive lesson in multifamily?
hanging on to the wrong property manager for too long. That is, I think, the single most expensive lesson I am learning right now.
That is a good question. That is a good answer, and I've had the same issue on multiple properties.
Sometimes you can't help it, um, and you get rid of them as soon as you can. But from the time you discover that you need to change to when you change, you need to minimize that as much as you can. So
I would say that besides that, that's a good one. Besides that, the most expensive lesson that I've had in multifamily syndication is that if you don't fully raise, you're going to have big problems. So a lot of these deals, especially the ones right now where it's a struggle to raise, if you don't fully raise, you're automatically behind the eight ball. It's automatically going to be tough to make the deal work.
yeah. And let's wrap it up. One more question: can a first-time sponsor be investable? I will say yes. This is possible. It is difficult, but it is doable. And I say that because my first deal, um, Angel and I were lead sponsors with Frank, and so we worked with the broker, submitted LOIs, changed LOIs, negotiated contracts, raised capital, got the loan in place, and closed. We were successful in it. It was hard, but it is doable. But you also have to nourish your investors. Angel did this for like 2 or 3 years before we even started with our real property by having her thought leadership platform and her networking. So people already knew us in the space, so it wasn't foreign to us. So you do have to put in the work. You can't just join a mentorship program, expect a 5% acquisition fee, jump in feet first, and hope to succeed that way.
I agree with you. The answer would be yes. There are people with track records that have been around for a long time that have still lost money on deals. Real estate's a risk. Um, I've had, I have deals that have done very well. I've had deals that have done not so well. I have deals that we'll call it unfinished right now that we're turning around and, things fell apart for a little bit, but I'm not giving up on it. And, yeah, you have to have faith in the person. You have to know, like, and trust them. If you think it's a good deal and you like the person, there'd be a reason why you invest.
Yeah. So, and also Angel and I also were in real estate for single family real estate for 20 years before we jumped into multifamily. So we weren't foreign to real estate. It is possible, but it is difficult. So, and again, if you have any questions, reach out. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, my website, ironcladunderwriting.com. Frank can be found on pretty much all of the above as well. Except, are you on YouTube yet?
I don't do YouTube as much, but I'm around.
All right. And again, we love these questions. It lets us know that y'all are listening. And so send us your questions, and maybe our next Q&A will answer your question online. Even if we don't answer your question online, we still try to answer in whatever format you ask the question. If it's an email or a LinkedIn message, we'll answer it there. But if you have the questions, somebody else probably does as well. So with that, we'll catch you next time. Bye. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Ironclad Underwriting Podcast. If you got value from today's conversation, make sure to subscribe, rate, and share the show. And don't forget to connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or check us out at our website at ironcladunderwriting.com for more insights and updates. If you have a question, a deal you're analyzing, or a topic you want us to tackle, shoot us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep your assumptions grounded, your models sharp, and your underwriting ironclad.